אוקיי, חברים מקשיבים? Yeah.
You got here first?
You can sit and sketch there if you want. And good. Whoever will come later. Rabotai, we got work to do.
Thank you. How are you?
נדרי לה השם השלם נגדנה לכל עמו היי בחצרות בית השם בתוכך ירושלים הללויה הללויה את השם כל גויים שבחו כל האומים כי גבר עלינו חסדו הללויה הללויה את אדוני כל גויים שבחו כל האומים כי גבר עלינו חסדו באמת אדוני לעולם hallelujah. All right, so
Has it always been a minyan of people? I thought it was three, a beit din of three that you could do a hatara.
yeah,
Is it really 10?
well, that's Chabad.
Oh, okay.
They want 10, but then they would want 10
people.
have 10 with penises. So,
10 pieces only.
you know,
איפה זה כתוב?
huh?
איפה זה כתוב?
איפה זה כתוב?
Then
Yeah.
move on, my love.
Yeah. It's like that story about how do you know you have to wear a yarmulke? Because it says, "Vayelach Avram holach u'noseh ha'negbo." So do you imagine he went without a hat?
Ooh.
There are all these. You're getting me into the cheder jokes. One goes this Melamed. The kid is asking Melamed, "What's Tzapichas Bidvash?" Because he had been learning about the manis Tzapichas Bidvash. He says, "Also Jeden sind aus von Mitzrayim, sie haben nicht gehabt was zu essen. So der Rebbe schon gegeben the man hat got a tam Tzapichas Bidvash." So he said, "But what's Tzapichas Bidvash?" As Yankov Avinu hat bedarf gehen kann Mitzrayim, sie will jeden was Mitzrayim, fahren bis das Nedach, weil sie kommen mit Mitzrayim, der Mann hat Gatam, Tzapiras Bidvash. Was Tzapiras Bidvash? Avram Avinu, ich bin Briss. So you get those silly things. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the issue here that's involved in Hatarat Nedarim on a larger scale, and I think I told you this once. I had a session 3 years ago at the Ohala when I asked Shaya and Art and Leah to make a bezdin for me for a Hatarat Nedarim. And that came about because of an experience that I had with a man who was never dying from colon cancer. I think I told you about that. And he had said when he was 16, he asked God to let him live to 60. Now he's 60, and never he's dying. And so it was too late. Everything had spread already through his body. But we did do a Hataras Nedarim. And I feel that from the point of view of what the body understands, the body is very literal about things. Mm-hmm. That it's necessary from time to time to have a Hataras Nedarim. For instance, even the issue of addiction. You know, if someone is dealing with an addiction or something like this, it feels like a neder. It's got you involved like a neder. I made a neder with my goof. I made a neder with my cells that I will whatever, you know. Wow. Without saying this or that, you know. I would have to make a neder about chocolate, you know. and so on and so forth. So that's you get a sense, uh, and when notice how they say noder hana'ah, you know, in Chazal when they're talking about saying I will not do something anymore, then you noder hana'ah. All right. So then there's a story. Sometimes there are situations that touch people so much. Someone told me this story, and really I can feel it in my heart telling it, that Rav Soloveitchik, he was married to an amazing woman. And she was also had a PhD. And someone called up and wants to talk to Dr. Soloveitchik. She says, which one? You know? Because most of the time people ignored her and looked only at him.
When people call
so-
our house and ask
Huh?
for Rabbi Gross, we say which one.
Right.
Right.
Right. So it happened, Nebuch, that she died before he did, and she was buried near Boston. So he would go there to the grave and talk with her and so on and so forth. And then he would make a neder that this is, you know, it's too much, it's not healthy and so on. And then he would call in a bezin to be a mata neder because he couldn't stay away. So you get a sense of when does a neder touch us, you know? A neder touches us when we want to be able to give a word and make the word stick. And most of the time, our words don't have that kind of power. And when someone, I give you my word. So in Yiddish, it would say, but you said, and you said, so mele was aber gesagt. So I said. And you see in politics, you see how this often happens. Watch my lips, you know? And then it changes again. So we really need, huh?
Most of the time when we talk about this each year, you get the feeling that nedarim are something you got to erase, you got to deal with. Ke'ilu, that they're always negative. And with what you just said, that when do we make nedarim? When we want our words to stick.
Yeah.
So there's a positive element
Oh,
that
sure.
we don't want necessarily to release ourselves from. I mean, it's kol nedarim. It's as if every neder we made in the course of the year needs to be released, and some of them need to stick.
Well, let me tell you, this was in '73 when Essel in San Francisco invited me to do that service there on 6th Street in the Helmet Club in Berkeley. And it was a wonderful service, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and people came, you know, Berkeley's finest, you know. Each one had a little cloth and put their altar there, and it was a big hall, and we were davening, and it was good stuff happened there. Came Yom Kippur, before Yom Kippur there's a lake there, you know. So I asked people to sit around the lake in twos, and each one to say, what ties me? Because if you look at the story of Lilliput, you know, here's Gulliver and Lilliput, and all the little strings tie him down, and he can't move. And if I were to ask anyone, who are you? Then usually it comes out in the genitive, you know. I'm a so-and-so's father, I'm so-and-so's brother, I'm so-and-so's son, I'm so-and-so's teacher, I'm so-and-so's worker or whatever, you know. We always have those little strings. So on Yom Kippur, one day of the year, we should be able to do it without the strings. So I asked the people to enumerate all those things that have a hold on us. And the other person would say mutarlach, 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 to untie him from there. Before Ne'ilah, I had the people come back and take them on again. See, this is the point here.
Oh.
And say, what am I going to say? I don't want to be a father anymore. You know, I'm going to say I don't want to be a husband anymore. Yes, but I want to be that after having had one free day, so that I can, you know, so that I can embrace that in a
Before
different...
Ne'ilah, they went back into the diet, or they just
into the
mentally-
diet, and there they would say the following: this one I take back,
Mm.
and this one I will not take back, and the other person would then have to say, and what is the karmic debt that this does, and how do you plan to deal with that? So if somebody says, I was in a relationship with such and such a person, and I don't want that relationship to continue anymore, I saw it wasn't good for me, and so on and so forth, how do I settle it? Because otherwise I leave that issue bleeding, it takes away energy. And then I have to go and constantly look, what is it that happens in grief and mourning? If you go with Freud, then every relationship that we have, that we invest energy in, he calls it a cathexis. And when you break a cathexis, what happens? That energy that was there bleeds out. It takes a while, until it sort of, a scar settles there and so on. So it's not easy. So Avelut for a year is that kind of a situation. You have to deal with so many ways we were connected. The word chavalim is very important here. Chavalim naflu b'ne'imim af nachlat shafra alai. The lines have fallen to pleasant places is the way in which King James Version has it.
Where is that from?
Tehillim.
Chavalim naflu. What?
Naflu li b'ne'imim af nachlat shafra alai. And don't ask me which capital
look
it
it
is. Okay. So what happens is that each time one of those, and the Chavalim tie us also to the Rebbeinu Shalom, as it says, Ki chelek Yud He Vav He Amo Yaakov Chevel Nachlato. And a Chevel is spun from Nimim, different Nimim, different threads.
Strands.
And the Chevel that connects us is called Terach Amudei Or, 720 Amudei Or, which is made up of the 613 the Oraita and the 7 the Rabbanan, and those are the channels, the cable, if you will, that connects us to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Each time we do an Avera, we break one of those Chavalim, those cables,
Wow.
and the nurturance that is supposed to come from spirit doesn't come to us anymore because that connection is broken.
Can it be
Yes, tshuva is
So tshuva
that's
reconnects the chevel.
that's right, the chevel, and that's the whole point, And going up and down is like the beanstalk, When you say you're doing an aliyat haneshama, you climb up on that chevel, as it were. Okay. When I once there was this meeting in Colorado Springs about ecology, and there was a nun there, Susan Gonzalez, I think was her name, who showed some beautiful pictures, and she showed the picture of a baby inside the womb, where the navel was connecting the baby to the mother's body, and it was like in this fetal position, but the head was back, and here goes that, and there are some pictures that you have in alchemy that shows like a tree growing out of the center of the belly, which has the same issue, that's there. So she showed a picture of the baby, and then she showed a picture of a astronaut in free fall outside, also connected there with that thing. And she said that that would be the most desirable prayer posture to be able to be in that. And when you go into the mikveh sometimes and the water holds you up like this, and you dunk,
That's beautiful.
and you dunk in the fetal place, That's very, very strong. Very
Well,
strong.
Rabbi Zalman, where does the Terach Amudei Or, where's that reference?
Terach Amudei Or
Yeah.
comes from, you're from Chabad, that's where I learned it, If you ask me where from, I don't remember the mimer, but they talk about of those 613 plus the 7 of the Rabbanan. If you want, I have a CD-ROM. We can look it up if you want to know about.
613
And the 7 the Rabbanan.
But where's this is 720. What am I missing?
Sorry, Tarach is not 720.
Where did I get 720?
From the phone number here.
It's
I made the
620.
mistake. It's 620.
It's
670. No, 620. 620. Okay.
620.
620. 613 plus 7 is
All right.
620.
Okay. And Taf
From the
Reish.
phone
Beautiful,
number.
though. It's beautiful.
And Taf Reish is 600 and Chaf is so.
Yeah.
All right.
So, but
Okay.
the chavalim, the
Seven
flu liban, you mean that's also the other kind of chaval. There's two kinds of chavalim.
Sure.
There's
Chavle
the
Leda,
binders,
Chavle
and then
Mavis,
there's
and
the-
Chavle Mashiach, right?
Right.
So you have both of these. But the problem about the Chavle Leda is that those chavalim are being broken, and as each time a chevel tears off, in labor, that's the pain. And Chavle Mavet is the same because Guf and Neshama are connected, and each time one of those chavalim. Look, the heroic thing that we experience in this community with Davida is so amazing. We can see each time another one of those chavalim going, and how she is heroically present to that. It's really amazing. And Chevle Mashiach is the same thing because we are in Golis, we are connected in Golis. Could you imagine, I'm just picking on him right now. Spielberg.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden Spielberg would have to leave all the wonderful things that he has in homes and so on and so forth, he can sit here and leave that, because Mashiach has come and he's got to go and live in Eretz Yisrael. Not yet. The other one behind you. Okay. So I think we want to give each one a chance to say that. So I'll start.
One question. Okay, one question.
Yeah.
So we have the chavalim, but you also have this other thing called the tzror hachaim,
Yeah.
which is similar. But I mean, I've never really.
Right. The
Help us
Tzror
with that.
HaChaim is identical with
Is
that.
it?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Because and when you want to say about the neshamas of Yanavelt, you're saying the same kind of a thing. Could you imagine? Go with the Catholic picture: abandon hope, all ye who enter herein as hell.
Yeah.
And then you have a sense of how cut off a person is,
Right.
and so to have an neshama no longer in a goof, walking around and not having any connection with anybody else.
Yeah,
And what we want is B'tzror HaChaim get integrated again into that higher life that is there.
So, but the cord that's holding Davida, for instance, that's fraying now, holding her body, her guf and
Yeah.
neshama together. But then there's another chevel that's holding her in her family. And
That's right.
pack of neshama that we
That's
all are.
right. That's the social chavalim that are there. But at the same time, if I were to think, there's some people in Alzheimer's who come out from time to time with a bit of clarity. And Eve has some stories, and they go to that they have been visiting other realms.
Yeah.
Okay? So they're making their connections. That it's almost like Olamecha tire b'chayecha, Try, see who in whose company are you going to be over there. Remember there was the 10th Man, a play and a movie, Padishayevsky,
Yeah.
and they had the people in that minyan and saying, what are you doing tomorrow? If you want to come with me to my cemetery to visit my plot, I'll come with you the day afterwards to visit your plot. So that's on a plain social level, that was their olamecha, tire b'chayecha, like the joke goes, this fantastic stone and everything else, and he says, that's what I call living. Yeah? Remember? Okay. No,
Can
I have...
ask a quick question? With the
Tarlach, did you do that in the evening, like at Kol Nidre, or in the morning?
What are you talking about?
The one where you had them sit
Dyads,
around in
the
the dyads around the stream, was that like
Oh, I did this
Shachari?
before Kol Nidre,
Before Kol Nidre.
and I did it also before Ne'ilah. Yeah.
Mm.
So that it came apart before Kol Nidre, and it came together before Ne'ilah, so that we can then say, I take this on. Look, when you say Kabbalat all Malchut Shamayim, Kabbalat all mitzvahs, and Kabbalat all relationships, and here we are doing Porek all relationship, that we are throwing off that before Yom Kippur, so that we can be, who am I when I'm not guy wired to other situations.
It feels to me like when you talk about that in terms of your relational ties and your identity ties and bringing that back into the reflection of what Davida is going through, and these chavalim that connect us to the Ribono Shel Olam are something other than the chavalim that tie us to our identity and our relations and this place.
Yeah.
And yet, it's like the other side of the energy. It's the mirroring. And so, like what I see Davida going through right now, and you read her vidui, it's like, just like feel such a privilege to be witness.
Yeah.
Is that she's getting, she hasn't said it exactly, but in some of my conversations with her, I've had this really strong sense that as she's releasing, allowing, surrendering to that severing that's happening on the physical plane, she's only able to do that because she's able to hold on to the extension of that chevel, which is beyond her physical existence. Right? And if we could only live always in that consciousness, that those things that we think are so critical and important that tie us to this realm are really being fed and sourced by something that is so much greater than, that's the whole process of surrender. And this thing that you talked about doing with the dyads, when I try to teach the concept of surrender, and especially when I work with people who are coping with illness and people who are dying, I often do this process where I have them surrender everything, surrender all of their identities and their relations and whatever, and sit in that experience of what it means to just be willing to surrender it all, and then feel that free float that happens, that falling into the love soup, of being held by something that's so much greater than that. It's a powerful process, and it's very scary, and most people can't get there.
At the same time, when we are cutting these things before Yom Kippur, we are trying to get to the Anochi Misha Anochi.
Exactly.
Anochi hu moche peshecha lamani, lamani, so that you should answer to me, ma'ame. Yeah.
I think it's beautiful to have this idea that on Yom Kippur we're in that embryonic fluid, that free float, and the only tie is something that's other than these
all these other things that tie us at our feet, right? Yeah.
Wow, if only we could do that with people.
Well,
Yeah,
so
the davening doesn't, the davening is all in the plural, and it's not, it's really, there's some countercurrents too.
That's right.
But
I think that's the expression of the fear. That's the expression of the fear of total surrender.
I had
the Buddhists really have much.
I had an image. I had an imagery, where you take, for example, the latest Aleph Sidur that Reb Daniel did, of the columns. It's with our effort in spiritual development in Jewish renewal that I imagine a machzor having a column that moves into the singular. As much as I respect the plural and the sense of we're in it together, and it doesn't hurt so much when we can say we. There's also places in the machzor where we need to jump over to the I for moments. And I haven't seen a machzor yet that
Well,
senses
we are
this.
doing, the I is much harder to write prayers for. That's why we have
That's why the index cards.
those four
Yeah.
footers
Right.
there, right?
Right.
And that allows people to go in and to do their personal thing.
That's
Look, I want us all to have a
Let's go
chance
on.
to do that, and there is
Okay,
something
we'll
else
shut up.
waiting. So let's do it. Okay. All right. Let's do it at least. We three say it together now. Okay. So otherwise we won't finish if we try it all.
Yeah.
All right. Now, just let me spend another moment about some of the visualize those things you want to have released. I'm thinking of Tirzah Yoshev Ladmoso. Imagine if today is my day to go. Bayomahu Avdu Eshtanosov. All the schemes are gone, you know, on that day all the schemes are gone. So I'm ready to go. Okay, you too? All right. Shim'u na rabotai dayanim mumchim. Kol neder, o shavua, o isur, afilu isur hanaa שעשרתי עליי, או על אחרים בכל לשון של איסור, וכל מוצא שפתי שיצא מפי, או שנדרתי וגמרתי בליבי אפילו לעשות איזה מצווה, איזה הנהגה טובה, שנהגתי 3 פעמים ולא התניתי שיהיה בלי נדר, הן דבר שעשיתי על עצמי או על אחרים, הן אותם הידועים לי, או שכבר נשכחו ממני, בכל הון התחרטנה בהון מעיקרה, ושואל ומבקש אני התרה עליהם. ואין אני תוהה חס ושלום על קיום מעשים טובים שעשיתי, רק אני מתחרט על שלא אמרתי בפירוש, הנני אעשה דבר זה בלי נדר ושבוע וקבלה בלב. לכן אני שואל במעלתכם, התרה בכל הון אני מתחרט על כל הנזכר, בין אם היו מעשים הנוגעים בגוף, או בנשמה, או בממון, והנה מצד הדין המתחרט ומבקש התרה צריך לפרוט הנדר, אך דעו נא רבותיי כי רבים הם ואי אפשר לפרוטם. ואין אני מבקש התרה על אותם הנדרים שאין להתיר אותם, על כן יהיו נא בעיניכם כאילו הייתי אותם. Respond.
הכל יהיו מותרים לכם,
הכל מחולים,
הכל מחולים לכם,
הכל שיעורים לכם,
אין כאן לא נדר ולא שבועה ולא איסור ולא הסכמה וקבלה בלב.
אבל יש כאן מחילה וסליחה וכפרה, וכשם שמתערבים אנחנו בבית דין של מטה, כך יהיו מתערבים בבית דין של מעלה.
הרי אני מוסר מודעה לפניכם, ואני מבטל מכאן ולהבא כל הנדרים וכל השבועות ואיסורים והסכמות וקבלות בלב שאקבל עליי בעצמי חוץ מבדיקה בשעת מנחה. ואם שאשכח תנאי מודעה זאת ואדור מהיום עוד, מעתה אני מתחרט עליהם, ומתנה עליהם שיהיו כולם בטלים ומבוטלים, לא שרירים ולא קיימים ולא יחלין עליהם, כלל וכלל, בכל הון הכרתנו בהון מעתה ועד עולם.
כולם יהיו בטולים, כולם יהיו מחולים, כולם יהיו שיעורים לך.
Stop. There may be also a situation where not only on the physical plane here where we are with other human beings, but min hashamayim, that we have been cut off because of some disconnect on our part. So you will now say, Further,
אין כאן
לא נידוי ולא שמשה ולא ארור, אבל יש כאן מחילה וסליקה וכפרה, כשם שמותר אתה בבית דין של מטה, כך תהא מותר בבית דין של מעלה. ולא יעשה שום רושם כלל, וכל הכללות יהפכו לבך בכתיב, ויהפוך אדוני אלוהיך לך את קללה לבך, כי אהבך אדוני אלוהיך.
hey, God loves us. Yay! Okay, Baruch Hashem. So then the next three, go ahead and do it.
Let us think. So you don't have to profess it out loud? You don't have to...
If you want to really make something work, you know, like apropos of something that you really are working on and it's hard, and you want to bring it into the social world so that we all know, you know, then that's fine.
I would like to.
Okay.
What about my cronies here?
I think they're doing it now.
Oh, sorry.
She's in a
Three at
rush.
time. Oh. I'm not in a rush. But there's three,
That's
three, and
okay,
three.
if you need the
Yeah.
relief, you can go next.
No, I can.
You three can go next if you want. Go ahead. You're mittendrin. Go ahead. Continue. Go ahead. You're in the middle. Go ahead.
Then I'll do mine.
Mine is about habits that I have my body tied around, and it's hard for me to. It's a habit of anxiety and a habit of fret, and it hits my sleep, and it disturbs my sleep, and but I don't need it anymore. It's done, and it has to do with, fearing that I won't have enough to present or to be or to as a rabbi, as a leader, that there's not. And I don't have it anymore. I feel like I'm sourcing in a good way, but I run into this, I better get anxious. I better get, like it's before Rosh Hashanah, I'm supposed to be, it's almost like I have to, it's not normal if I'm not all clutched and stressed and having fun. I'm not supposed to be having fun with it. I'm supposed to be suffering.
You're Jewish.
That's a different kind of hatarat.
Let me tell you something
I'm going to cancel that one.
about charata. You know what a cheret is?
Regret.
An engraving tool.
Oh.
Okay?
Wow.
Charata is sort of digging it out. Digging it out so it won't be there. So we want to dig out from you the when you say Bechulhon, ichratna behon, itcharatna behon, you know. It should be all dug out.
So is that the same word as charata?
Huh?
That I regret.
That's exactly
my
what
regret
I'm saying.
starts to dig it out?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
That's a
powerful.
powerful concept.
In relation to Cherut.
Yeah.
No, that's
That's tough.
wait. Shh. Let's not jump. Because from the biliteral thing, chet and resh together has all that kind of stuff. Almost vayichar af has the same chr thing, okay? But also chara means shit.
Right.
Remember
Well, it's the
on
same
those
thing.
portions where they change the kri and the ktiv in the Torah.
Yeah.
Right.
Chorein, Shayaneim, they say Tseoteim, you know, that's Tsoateim, and Meimei Ragleim, because they don't like to use these original Hebrew words that were there. But in the Chumash it says, your shit and your piss is what you're going to eat, you know, like it's very, very tough language. So the rabbis didn't want this in public when you read the Torah.
Chas v'shalom.
But if you write
Sanitized
if you write a Torah and you change those words in the Sefer Torahs you write, then it's puzzle.
Yeah.
It's very
Wow.
very important that you know.
Yeah.
What parsha is that in?
I think it's at the end of Vayikra.
Oh, Vayikra.
Yeah, yeah.
Parshat Vayikra.
No, end of
End
the
of
Sefer
Vayikra.
Vayikra.
Okay.
That's where it is. No,
Bechukotai, isn't it?
yeah, Bechukotai, right.
And the pasuk, do you remember?
I'll have to look it up. Sorry. It's this sort of pasuk. You know, most of the psukim I remember are the ones that I recite often, but this one.
But just some phrase from it that we can go search.
I'll take Chorehem. It says Chet Vav Resh Yud Hey final mem. We can look it up later on. Okay. All right. You want to say something?
Yes. I want to let go of my resentments, and I want to. I have this sense that somehow when I came into this body as soul, that somehow I made some agreements to be certain ways in my life, like looking at things sometimes, like the fetch part. And I want to really release that part.
Amen.
And it's funny because just yesterday I was thinking about that fun, like you started to say something about fun, and I was thinking, I was listening to some song on the radio, and I was like, yes, I need to have more fun in my life. So it's like to go from that place of to moving more toward that and embodying that.
You see, this is the shot about, do I deserve it or do I not deserve it? Ki ahevcha Hashem Elokecha, you deserve it. You deserve to be able to let go of that, okay? How about you? Any confessions?
I need a screen. No, mine are mostly about impatience with my children. That there are ways, things that came, I think, more naturally to me as a kid aren't coming naturally to my children, and I'm finding myself very impatient with them, whether in sports or particularly at homework, I think, and I'm realizing that they're more actually a reflection of me than them.
May those things from your childhood be released so that you don't have poket avon avot al banim. Right. Okay, go ahead. Shimona.
Shimona Rabotai, Dayanim Mumchim, Kol Neder, או שבוע, או איסור, ואפילו איסור הנאה שאסרתי עליי, או על אחרים בכל לשון של איסור, בכל מוצא שפתיים שיצא מפי, או שנדרתי וגמרתי בליבי אפילו לעשות איזו מצווה או איזו הנהגה טובה שהנהגת 3 פעמים ולא הנאתי שיהיה בליבי נדר, הן דבר שעשית על עצמי או על אחרים, הן אותם הידועים לי, או שכבר נשכחו ממני. בחורבון התרעת בהון מעיקרא, ושואל ומבקש אני התרה עליהם. אין אני תוהה חס ושלום על קיום מעשה טובים שעשיתי, רק אני מחרט על שלא אמרתי בפירוש, הנני אעשה דבר זה בלי נדר ושבועת וקבלה בלב. לכן אני שואל ממעלתכם, התרה בכל הון, אני מתחרט על כל נזכור, בין אם היו מעשים הנוגעים בגוף או בנשמה או בממון. והנה בצד הדין המתחרט ומבקש התרה צריך לפרוט הנדר. אך דעו נא רבותיי, כי רבים הם אי אפשר להפרוטם. ואין אני מבקש התרה על אותם הנדרים שאין להתיר אותם, על כן יהיו נא בעיניכם כאילו הייתי אותם.
Coming with scissors. הכל יהיו מותרים לך, הכל מחולים לך, הכל שרויים לך. אין כאן לא נדר ולא שבוע ולא איסור ולא הסכמה וקבלה בלב. אבל יש כאן מחילה וסליחה וכפרה, וכשם שמתירים אנחנו בבית דין של מטה, כך יהיו מותרים בבית דין של מעלה.
הרי מודעה לפניהם,
ואני מבטל מכאן ולהלאה כל הנדרים וכל השבועות ואיסורים שהסכמות וקבלות בלב שאקבל עליי בעצמי חוץ מנדרי תענית בשעה מנחה. ואם שאשכח תנאי מודעה הזאת ואדור מהיום עוד ומעתה אני מתחרט עליהם ומתנה עליהם שיהיו כולם בטלים ובוטלים לה שררים ולה קיימים ולה יהון חלים כלל וכלל בכל הון יתרקנה בהון מעתה ועד עולם.
כולם יהיו מותרים לך, כולם יהיו מחוברים לך, כולם יהיו שבויים לך. אין כאן לא נידור ולא שמתה ולא ארור, אבל יש כאן מחילה, סליחה וכפרה. וכשם שמותר אתה בבית דין של מטה, כך תהיה מותר בבית דין של מעלה. ולא יעשה שום רושם כלל, וכל הכללות יהפכו לברכה כדכתיב, ויהפוך אדוני אלוהיך את הקללה לברכה, כי אהבך אדוני אלוהיך.
Amen. Could I just ask about a couple of words?
Please.
Nidui v'shamta?
Yeah. What happens with that is a person, when they are doing certain things that offends heaven, you are in nidui and shamta are like saying you stand in contempt of God.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
They go together?
Yeah, nidui shamta. And when you want to be getting rid of a nidui, in the past you would take off your shoes and you'd come in like this to the bet din. And there's a whole thing yet in the time of the Gemara, when they were dealing with the people whom they had sort of excommunicated, Ma'aseh Rabbi Eliezer and so on and so forth. So they had the that element, someone is benidui. And the cherem that people put out against the Hasidim was the same. They threw nidui shamta cherem on them and so on. Okay.
So this is basically saying, I mean, but Victor has a good point there. I mean, you're saying basically, you're taking away my power to vow, isn't it? It's
No.
saying I'm not going to vow.
No, the whole point is like it says, Tov shelo tido mishetido ve'eno mishalem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you have a whole thing about erkecha and nedarim and so on and so forth. So what the eight say is always to make it nedava and not neder. Nedava neder has tied you.
Okay.
Nedava hasn't tied you. Nedava is kol ish asher yidvenu libo. When the heart is ready to give that, then you give it. So each time you might say, I am autonomous in Nedava, I have become heteronymous in Neder.
Okay.
Now comes the Ishbitzer and says like this. There are always some people who feel that the Rebbeinu Shalom should have taken that thing which gives them trouble and made it asur. You know, you can imagine an alcoholic. If the alcoholic would have a thing that this is asur, that the Torah doesn't permit that. Look how many of us, I remember a time when I was smoking cigarettes, and it was really very clear that from Friday evening till Motzei Shabbat, part of making Havdalah was also smoking the first cigarette, But how come I could manage for 26 hours without it, And that was because I had tied it. This is what the neder is about. So the Ishbitzer says, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, each individual knows sometimes what he has to make asur for himself. So he would. So one of the 613 mitzvahs is that you can make whatever it is you need a lo teseh for you. Okay.
So it occurred to me that when you go through life, there are certain things that one should make a neder for, that maybe because of the stage in your life, you don't make that neder. An example, when you're in your 20s, you have no neder with your body, all right? You think you're going to live eternally, all right? When you get much older, you realize that you haven't become conscious, connected to those requirements for briut. So then you might need to make a neder, because so far we've talked about the strings that need to be unattached. What about the need to attach certain strings?
So that's what happens on Sukkot and Simchas Torah. Take a look. When you go and you start the Torah all over again, when you go and you do the 7 dances. By the way, I did meet with some of the musicians, so that they should make the kind of music that should make the dances an avodah, not a performance. So you get the sense that I take on Avram Avinu, I take on. So it's not that we become porke we throw everything off. That on the other hand, how would I say, you have to make a fresh start. If you go to Chassidus and Kabbalah, you go to the level where you say even the Rebbeinu Shalom makes a fresh start. A new divine name is coming down on Yom Kippur for the next year, because if not, the old one, we would drown in the bad karma that we create. So there has to be sort of what they call a period of statute of limitations, and we want to collaborate with that. But let me say one more thing before the next group. This is not so easy for people who don't have a sense of Kabbalah's Ol Malchus Shemayim and Kabbalah's Ol Mitzvahs. When we take on halacha as being something binding, then halacha is not only binding for us, it's also binding for the Rebbeinu Shalom. And if you have that wonderful piece where it said Lo Bashamayim Hi, that Natzchuni Bana Natzchuni, that it's given to us in our hands. So when you say Kishem Shanachnu Matirim Bezdin Shalmata Karim Mutor Bezdin Shalmala, and we say the same thing before Kol Nidra, that B'Yeshiva Shalmala, B'Yeshiva Shalmata, Anu Matirin. So each time you hear the word Matirin, untie. Okay? So that's a very important element in this one. But because it is halachically binding, that's our covenant with God, we can also say that we create facts with halacha. Example, just the same way as an umpire creates a fact by the call, okay? It becomes in the game, becomes a call. So when a psak is being said, then it becomes a fact. Interesting story. There's a tailor in Vilna who, with all his apprentices and so on, because in those days it was a family. You didn't eat anywhere else. You eat with the master and the journeyman and the apprentices, and it's part of mishpachah. So they're sitting at the table, and a shaila comes up, and they don't know whether the soup is going to be okay or not. So they send to the Rav, Reb Shmuel was his name, he was the Rav in Vilna, and they also sent to the Vilna Gaon. So one went with the shaila to the Rav, and one with the shaila to the Vilna Gaon, and they come back at the same time. Important. Because if one of them would have come earlier, then finished, They come back at the same time. One says, the Rav says kosher, and the Vilna Gaon says no. Now, you can understand the Rav is the Rav of town, and it's in his power to decree what there is. So he says, you tell Rebellinke, that's what he called him, that he should come, and we're going to both eat soup. in the house, because he has to remember the same thing, that it was the Yom Kippur, according to his
Rabbi
cheshbon, he
Joshua
was
has to
coming
come.
with a cow, and so on and so forth. So he has to b'maklo b'tarmilo, he should show up in Besmedrisha on the day when he thought it was Yom Kippur, in order that he should go with the dat harabim with this thing. So he is a rov, and he has a right to do that. So they come, the two of them are seated, and they start bringing in the soup, the kettle of the soup, and put it on the table so to dole out to everybody the soup. When a candle falls down into the soup, and the candles are of chelev, and so the soup is now really treife. So Reb Shmuel says, when it comes to the din, I'm the rov. When it comes to supernatural things,
Supernatural.
right? But you see how the din, as he calls it, it makes a fact, and that's by the authority vested in me, I hereby declare you to be, that's like the umpire calls the shots. So by doing this thing legally, it creates on the karmic level, it creates a loosening of those bonds. Okay, go ahead. The next.
It seems to me that the neder is a way of externalizing the issue, so that it's almost like we don't take full responsibility now. We've externalized it, and then the nava is an internal process, so that it has more integral meaning than the neder, which we may have meant at the time, but when we keep doing or not doing whatever we did a neder about, it's like an external thing that we put outside of ourselves in order to force us.
Not only outside of ourselves, but we give something over to somebody else. I give you an example. When the issue came up as to what are the ketubot that you can create for same-sex couples, so I said you have to have tanai, you have to have shutfis, you have to have neder, and you have to have brit. Tanai are the details of the thing, and shutfis are how you're going to be shutfim in these things, and all of these are already dinim that we have from before. Neder is that my goof is not going to be used by anybody else but by you, and that's a very important element. And it turns out, this is one of the big problems in same-sex relationships, that they don't like to be tied that way. And recently we went through that kind of a divorce. You got to tell me, bring me up to date how that was handled, okay? And then there has to be brit, that you call on God to be present in this covenant. So you get a sense that neder is something that I bind to someone else. So there is an interesting din that goes like this. When you say La Hashem neder, the Chachamim don't like that, because the Gemara says in the Dorim, when you say La Hashem, you might die before you say the word neder, and then you have mentioned God's name in vain. But so La Hashem Nedaraya Shalem, it says David HaMelech in one place, and another place is in Nedarai La Hashem HaShalem. So the Jose of Lublin says like this: everybody has to say Neder La Hashem. But David HaMelech, who knew that he would die on Shabbos, and it wasn't Shabbos when he made the neder, he could say La Hashem Nedarai. But when he is making it so that everybody could hear, he's making a neder, Negdan ala Chalamo, he didn't want to Lifnei Iver Lo Titein Michshol, that they should go the wrong way. So Nedarai, La Hashem Asham Negdan ala Chalamo. But when I'm alone, is La Hashem Nedarai. Interesting how neder ties into a social. Okay, next
What
group.
did you say about Simchas Torah and Sukkot as the time? What was that? I missed that. That was shorthand.
Taking on again. When you're taking on Chesed with Avraham Avinu, you're taking on Gvura. So these are general things, Yeah.
And Nedarim you don't take on generally. You wouldn't take on Shabbos or a Heter. you wouldn't do this on Shabbos. You can't.
What?
I mean, this whole,
This is work. This
it's
is
work, and so is. I mean, you would never make a neder on Shabbat. Also.
Well, I tell you, it turns out Bavu Shenadar, Chamisha Ruble Bat Beit HaKnesset, V'Shnei
right.
Ruble Bat Harav, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
They used to
Yes,
make
yeah.
Nedarim on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Hatarat Nedarim they didn't do.
Just a minor point. When you mentioned the different things regarding same-sex marriage, they also
Yeah.
apply to heterosexual marriage, the things that you listed, because
Yeah.
they already exist. But the neder, all right, that
Yeah.
you take on in a wedding, the couple takes on
Yeah.
in a wedding. So how do you exempt that spiritually when you say kol nedarim?
Well, that's the whole inyan of that you cannot masne al davar shekatuv b'Torah. You know, that certain things that already part of Torah, you cannot make nedarim to lift them off. I can't make a neder to eat chazer, for instance. It isn't chal from the moment on because a masne al davar she'asra haTorah. And so, with male and female situations, you don't have a problem. There's ishut. When in same sex there isn't the same kind of issue that was necessary to produce that which will produce the same ties of relationship like an issue. That's why I made those four.
No, but I'm not concerned about the same-sex versus
Yeah.
the heterosex. I'm concerned about the fact that in a wedding there is a neder.
Yeah,
So is that
it's an
neder
isser.
considered
There's
deoraita?
No, it's not a neder. It's an isser. When he gives her kiddushin, she is asur lechol haolam,
Right.
and that comes even with erusin before the bia. She is asur, you know, and that's not only is she asur, the wife, but to him, her mother and her daughter and
Right.
her sister
All the
and all
stuff,
that.
mincha and Yom Kippur.
Right.
There's actually no language of nedarim in chatuna, in a chuppah.
No.
It's kiddushin and isur, and there's no language of nedarim.
All right, so it's not hatarat. The only hatarat nedarim you need to have at a get is, in case you have made a neder to give a get, we are matter to you the neder, so that you should be free while you give the get. Remember, you cannot be coerced at the time of the get.
Right.
So, in case you have made a neder and promised to make a neder, we are matter to you.
Because in that
So-
case, what you're referencing,
Yeah.
what we did with them was make a neder that should the thing end,
Yeah.
that there must be a get.
Well, so we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. She hasn't said.
Yeah, she did.
She did.
Okay.
Okay, you three though. Go ahead.
I just would like to say that one of the things I'm working on is becoming more patient and accepting of people who aren't as fast as I am. Because I'm very likely to be impatient when someone isn't fast. And that covers a lot of territory.
So, amen.
Patience.
Erech apayim, erech stretching. Erech apayim. Okay, go ahead.
I've made my
Okay.
silent now.
You?
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to think about. I realized that actually some of my greatest demons are also my greatest assets. So I would like to ask God to please open my eyes so I can, tell not just tell the difference between the two, but be able to choose. So in that respect, really, to turn the klala to bracha. In that respect.
Amen. Can we borrow one sheet so that Michael will have his? Okay.
And I got a sub-chapter too. I never want to see myself as a victim. I always like to be in control of actually my feeling and what I see is happening to me. It's a big thing in my life.
Amen. So we're gonna be masking to that when we say hakol. Go ahead. Shimu.
שמונה רבותיי, דיינים ומומחים, כל נדר או שבועה או איסור ואפילו איסור הנאה שאסרתי עליי או על אחרים, בכל לשון של איסור וכל מוצא שפתיי שיצא מפי, או שנדעתי וגמרתי בלבי, אפילו לעשות איזו מצווה או איזו הנהגה טובה, שנהגתי 3 פעמים, ולא התניתי שיהיה בלי נדר, הן דבר שעשיתי על עצמי או על אחרים, הן אותם הידועים לי, או שכבר נשכחו ממני. בחלהון התחרטנה בהון מעיקרה, ושואל ומבקש אני התרה עליהם, ואין אני תוהה חס ושלום על קיום מעשים טובים שעשיתי, רק אני מתחרט על שלא אמרתי בפירוש הנני אעשה דבר זה בלי נדר ושבועה וקבלה בלב. לכן אני שואל ממעלתכם, התרה בחלהון, אני מתחרט על כל הנזכר, בין אם היו מעשים הנוגעים בגוף או בנשמה או בממון. והנה מצד הדין המתחרט ומבקש התרה, צריך לפרוט הנדר. אך דעו נא רבותיי, כי רבים הם ואי אפשר לפרוטם, ואין אני מבקש התרה על אותם הנדרים שאין להתיר אותם, על כן יהיו נא בעיניכם, כאילו הייתי פורטם.
הכל יהיו מותרים לך, הכל מוכרים לך, הכל שבויים לך. אין כאן לא נדר, לא שבועה, ולא איסור, ולא הסכמה וקבלה בלב. אבל יש כאן מחילה וסליחה וכפרה. כשם שמתאים אנחנו בבית דין של מטה, כך יהיו מותרים בבית דין של מעלה.
הרי אני מוסר מודעה לפניכם, ואני מבטל מכאן ולהבא כל הנדרים וכל השבועות ואיסורים והסכמות וקבלות בלב שאקבל עליי בעצמי, חוץ מנדרי תענית בשעת מנחה. ואם שאשכח בני מודעה הזאת, ואדום מהיום עוד, מעתה אני מתחרט עליהם, ומתנה עליהם, שיהיו כולם בטלים ומבוטלים, לא שרירים ולא קיימים, ולא יהיון חליל כלל וכלל. בכולם התחרטנה, בהון מעתה ועד עולם.
כולם יהיו מותרים לך, כולם יהיו מכורים לך. כולם יהיו שבויים לך, אין כאן לא נידוי ולא שמתה ולא ארור, אבל יש כאן מחילה וסליחה וכפרה, וכשם שמותר אתה מבית דין של מטה, כך תהא מותר בבית דין של מעלה, ולא יעשה שום רושם כלל, וכל הקללות יהפכו לברכה, כדכתיב, ויהפוך אדוני אלוהיך לך את הקללה לברכה, כי יאהבך אדוני אלוהיך. Amen. Shana Tova. Now take one from the top and one from the bottom of these.
Was there a reason, Rabbi Zalman, why the release from Nidarim was done before a Beit Din of 3 or 10 in Chabad, but taking on Nidarim wasn't required to be done before
Right, it didn't. That is just between you and. Remember when he's talking about the difference between that which happens ben Adam lachavero and ben Adam lamakom. So all those that you have, nidritanis b'shas mincha, you know, all the things, the Kabbalah Tova, mitzvah that I did 3 times, is all very much what's going on between Adam lamakom. There aren't very many things at this point. If I make a neder to a person, I need to have the release from the other side. I can't. This isn't gonna help it. Take a look when it comes to the business of Prose Bowl, for instance. You know, there it was clear, for instance, that if you make a promise to somebody that you will pay even after the Shemitah, and it's clear that you will take a Prose Bowl out, you can't say that Shemitah has taken this away, you know. In the same way, Mazel Tov. Well, thank you.
This is where being fast isn't so bad.
All right.
Zrizut.
That's the reason, yeah. Like a Ayala Shlucha, yeah? All right. Look at that next sheet over here. What I know of me and my gods, a take-home lab for inner auditing.
Great.
if you remember, Barry Barkin used to do that with the people in Berkeley. I wrote this up years ago when I was at Temple University as part of how to go and check out things. So let's read it, and then you take it home. There's room to write in between. Look at that. What I know of me and my gods is an important element here, because this is, you ask, where are my absolutes, right? And what do I know of, how do I relate to these things? So when I'm disappointed and frustrated, I find solace in. And you can see that you get to know the visceral tone is going to find food helpful. The person who is a compulsive, obsessive person will be tidying up. Someone else will go shopping, going to a movie, sitting with my significant objects, going over my stamp collection, if you will. Being with my friends and with my love. What this amounts to, it's almost like saying, where is my heart? And where do I find my consolation? Yes?
Rabbi, why did you thought it would be to write gods opposed to God, between me and my gods?
Because we are talking about what is a that the Elohim Acherim that you're involved with.
Gods of my own creation.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
The animal that describes me best when I'm feeling high, low, and medium. That's I'm jumping like a little dog, like a pup, I'm slinking like a dog with his tail behind. So you get a sense, you have a feeling that I don't know if that. It seems to me there's a Yiddish song about that, but I don't remember it at this point. That sometimes I feel like a. It's in the Tehillim, yeah. Behemoth hayisi imo,
Right.
right? Okay.
Well, then there's the folk song, the American folk song. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
Yeah.
All right, when you go into that, really, forget about the rest of the words. That's a powerful imagery of,
Sure.
of
Of being low, right? On the Jungian scale, I think I'm a sensor, feeler, reasoner, intuitor. Primarily, this is the function you control. Secondarily, is the function that drives you to passion. In other words, which is the primary attitude that you have, which is usually the weaker one. The stronger one is the one that drives you, So that's just a good thing to have a sense as where am I in these things. While objectively my body traits make me a cerebral, somato, visceral tone, I feel that really I am the other.
What's the difference between somato and visceral?
Somato is a person in muscles.
Oh.
Visceral is a person in the kishkis. Right? So when you say, for instance, Buddha is a cerebral tone. Moshe Rabbeinu is a somatotone.
Yeah.
Well, look at the way Michelangelo has a Moses. He looks at, and you ask him, "What do you believe in?" I believe in doing this and doing that. Right?
Who'd you put in visceral?
Jesus.
Ah, whoa.
The point is that most of the time Jesus is being painted like he's always gehungert.
Kishka feeling, Kishka passion.
Well, but there's also he's accused to be a zoiler v'soiver, a winebibber and a glutton.
What?
Do this in New Testament. You'll
Yeah.
see he was accused as a zoiler
That
v'soiver.
was the accusation.
And they were saying also, and look, his big geschäft is, you don't have enough wine, do this in remembrance of me, esepis, I once saw one crucifixion painted with Jesus with a beichale,
What's a butt?
a belly.
Oh, a bell.
Yeah.
Like the Buddha. The Buddha. Right.
Jesus is the one that
All
never
right.
left home, and Moses left home as soon as he could.
Pardon?
Jesus is the one that never left home, and Moses left home as soon as he could.
3 months.
The difference between
The elements of male and femaleness that I like and dislike in me. That's something to
This is
to
great.
give
You make
yourself.
this up?
Huh?
Is
No,
this Barry or
Barry
you?
Bar-
You
I
made
did
up?
this for the class
Yeah.
that I was working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Temple. Oh, okay.
Barry used to come around. I mean, when we were at the Minion,
Yeah.
as we during the month of Elul, we'd always invite Barry to come to one of the Elul nights. He'd bring these sheets and some other ones that he'd produced, and we sat there and we filled them out. You know?
I want to serve others by doing such and such.
By becoming a rabbi.
Oh, yeah, es hat gefällt dabei I tell you sometimes, Mary is here and she sees the traffic that happens on the telephone and the Geschäften and so on. So I say to her, no, I had to be a rabbi, huh? But it's really that sense that, oi, you know, I think the kiss that Moshe Rabbeinu got was, oh, thank you, God. That now I can let go of Echo Esol Levadi Torchem Masachem Verifem. Oi, thank you. Yeah, if I had only 1 year to live, what would I not want to miss? I think that the purpose of my present life is such and such. To put it in terms of drama, my story and its plot cast me as so and so and so and so. The one that I would like to play is so and so and so and so. Okay. Oi. You know, the business about in William Tell, where he has to shoot the apple off his kid's head, you know. Sometimes I feel that that's sort of the position I'm put into, you know. I can't afford to miss, and I can't say no to this, yeah. And the one I would like to play, you know, sometimes I think I would like to play Odysseus traveling around and having all the experiences, and then still being able to come home to Penelope and say, right?
Well, you know, I mean, just in what's his name? George Steiner, the literary critic at Oxford, he writes in one of his essays that he would go into his baby's room at nighttime and look down upon his baby and wrestle with the fact that by bringing him into the world as a Jew and circumcising this boy, that he puts upon the child's head an ancient loathing. Right?
An ancient
loathing of anti-Semitism and
loathing. Yeah.
So I wonder about how do you take something like that off, or how do you deal with the wish? I'm confronted with the fact I'm not going to be around, you know, all the years of the lives of my children, but because of the decisions that Nadya and I made, we've placed upon them this ancient hatred, this potential for their own destruction.
So I tell you, at one point I had a vasectomy, and I married Ilana, and it was very clear to me that she needed to have children, and I needed to have children with her. I reversed
That's
it.
a Hatarat Nadarim.
Oh, very much so. Very, very much so.
בכל העולמות.
But before we did this, we went to Auschwitz. You can imagine what that's like to be there at the ovens and to go through Birkenau and then to say, into such a world, do I want to bring more children? Okay? And there is an Afalpi Velamrot HaKol, you know, that this came through. It's a very hard one to work through, but I can't, you see, what's the Akedah for us today? It's just that, to say, Rabbeinu Shalom, I'm giving you another child to carry on Yiddishkeit about this. What I'm so worried about, I tell you, sometimes if I ask myself, what's my nightmare? It is that some people, and I just want to say this because it has to do with the Vad and has to do with all that stuff, that I'm worried that there will be some other people who will be renewal rabbis who will not really care that 7 generations after them there should be Jews. Yeah, I'm talking about a nightmare now, you know. I just have, sometimes I have a feeling that there is this kind of sense, we'll do it this generation, maybe another generation, you know, maybe it'll liquidate. You take a look in the back of the mind of people, there is now a possibility that we will not have Israel. You know, after this Maisa with
It's the first
Hezbollah.
time.
Yep.
Huh?
Yep.
First time those thoughts ever even surface for some people.
Because you see the future with a nuclear weapon in the hands of an enemy, and a world that's not willing to have the courage to confront it. Yeah.
So still, I think at this point it's very necessary to be able to say, "Af al pi kein v'lamrot hakol," you know.
I mean,
That's-
I still remember, Reb Zalman,
Hmm?
the first time we ever talked
Yeah.
verbally, after saying hello,
Yeah.
was your statement about that you're not convinced that there will be a second generation of the renewal of Judaism. I think that in all those years since then, that's been the primary question of what am I striving for to ensure.
Yeah.
And I've said to you a number of times, I feel convinced about the next generation.
Yeah.
After that, face.
So this is there's something, I haven't got time right now to talk about a self-seeding process. A self-seeding process, and I can't talk about it right now. It would take a lot longer to get into that. Let me just finish. In terms of, on my inner board of directors serve.
Who is, because every week when Reb Shai and I talk,
Yeah.
invariably the term your inner board of directors comes out of his
Yeah.
mouth to me.
Yeah.
And I haven't asked him, who are they?
Uh-huh. Well, you know, it's very interesting when it's changed, but I used to always ask this kind of a question. Timothy Leary was one of the very strong people on my inner board of directors. So was Ramdas, and so was the Rebbe at the same time, you know. And so was Fritz Perls, you know. They change. And part of the Cheshbon HaNefesh is to say, this one has to go and this one comes in, you know. They're not, you really have to send them away. Some people have to go, Lazazel, you know. And the same, the person of my inner audience who would most likely approve of me and my role when I acted out are. And you know that yourself, that you're not in a vacuum, you know. There are times when I might be in an either relationship with another person, but you know what? Just like they say with the Kohen Gadol, why Kohen Gadol can't marry an almona, because there'll be shlosha bar mita, you know?
Huh.
You know, because she has her first husband and that still is there. So I find that sometimes I may be talking to another person, but the Rabbeinu Shalom is there, that's fine, but not necessarily the Rabbeinu Shalom. Look, when I was under supervision for doing therapy stuff, my supervisor was sitting inside of my inner audience when I was talking to people. That's how it goes.
One more to add to the board of directors, and what's the mission statement?
That's so. You see, we all talk about the corporation, the incorporation that we are. When I feel most ashamed and guilty, I think of so and so looking at me. You know, I would give my life for. I wouldn't do that if it cost my life. If I found out such and such is true, I would commit suicide. You know, if you get the idea of Cholila v'chas, if I found out that the old Gnostics were right, that the world is run by Yaldabaoth, you know, an evil god who is using us like cattle, you know, for entertainment. I would want to go and say, fuck you, like this. Okay. I wouldn't want heaven if so-and-so were kept out of it.
Myself.
Well, I tell you, there's so
Video.
many wonderful stories about Chaverim, take a look. If I were to be a good Protestant, yeah, and I was told that I could have heaven, but this Jew who hasn't accepted Jesus would be kept out of it, would I want heaven that way? It creates that element of with whomever have I got contracts. And on the other hand, if I had to be in hell, I would hope that so-and-so is there with me. That can be taken both ways, on the one hand, I can imagine that I would like to have a chaver there with whom, while it's hurting and so on and so forth, I should be able to say, no, how you doing there, It's very hard to do hell alone,
It's kind of like being in the Schwitz in New York with your best buddy.
Right. On the other hand, it would also be there, that's Proskudnyak. I don't mind suffering a B, I can see how he's getting it.
For eternity.
Before I die, I would like to be able to say, now I know why. That's the to know the Wampeter, What was I here for? What was my purpose? To what was I deployed? My rats are 1984. Remember that? In 1984, that's the book.
George Orwell.
Oh,
George
not
Orwell.
here.
And there he will not betray his lover until finally they put his face into a cage. And the rats are coming to eat him, and he can't move his face out. That thing that would totally break you. Do you know what that would be? Okay. If I could choose my parents, whom would I choose? Oh, yeah. Would I have made different choices? I think. Huh?
Really?
Yeah. At least certain times in my life, I would have said so. Oh, sure. If I could redesign my parents, Oh, sure. Yeah. My mom was very good giving me love with food, but hardly ever a hug. So I would want to redesign it. My papa was never satisfied. There was always nicht zufrieden. If I was a Zionist, I'm not frum enough. If I was frum, I'm not open enough. He and I were in a seesaw. Sometimes I was the frum one, and he was not frum enough, and sometimes he was the frum one, and I wasn't frum enough. So I sent him once a thing that was done at a seder in New Bedford. So a photographer came from the newspaper to take a picture of the seder, and I sent him a copy, and I got a scathing note from him saying, "Oi, so he feels news of mit seder, like that." He didn't have any hasoge as to where I was with that stuff.
So one
okay.
question you don't have here that just occurred to me by what you were saying is, are there certain people that you would prefer to exclude from the Beit Din Shalamala?
Yeah.
Or who would you want on it?
All right, that's very good.
I know I don't want my mom on it. She'll say, about when I go to Israel, we go, the mishpacha goes to Netanya, where my mother is buried, and I have the kids take a picture of me standing next to the kever.
Yeah.
So one time, one of them asked, "Mom, why every time we come to Israel, we go to the grave and have a picture taken of Dad?" Right? And Nadya says, because he's really fearful that when he dies, on the Beit Din Shalamala will be his mother, and she'll say, "You never visited."
Visit me.
We're burying him with those pictures.
I have a sense my mother would start looking and say, "Hey, this shirt you got? What's wrong with the green one?"
Did we have the same mother?
It's the universal mother.
If there were a last judgment, I would most fear the results of my this or that. The dream that most often occurs is, and for me, I can't find the car or where I parked it. Okay. My Schnorrer fantasy is, Schnorrer fantasy goes like this. It was Freud who talked about that. He said he's walking down the street. It was during the time that he was making his experiments with cocaine. You know, he was doing that, and cocaine was at one point a whole geschäft. Arthur Conan Doyle and so on, you know, ganze Asik. So he's walking down the street, and there is a carriage coming, clop, 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 down. And he says, this is the time when there will be, the man is going to come by, and he'll knock on the window and call me over, and he will say, young man, I've been watching your progress. I've equipped the laboratory for you and created a stipend for you, and so on and so forth. No, for me, the Templeton Award, or a, what's the name of the...
MacArthur?
MacArthur, yeah. That used to be my Schnorrer fantasy, you know. I don't know, what's my Schnorrer fantasy now? I have to think about it, you know. Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
Thank
So,
you.
Sure.
Very good. Rabbi Zalman, for other people, is this translated at all, the Hatara?
there is I can give you a translation if you want. It's in the same